And hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. How was lunch? Everybody got a fill? I ate my first Philly cheesesteak sandwich thing. It wasn't bad. I liked it. Cheese and meat. What a weird combination. So welcome. You're at the HMIS Project Management and Annual Calendar of Events Workshop. We're very happy you're here, and we have some pretty good content to bring you. A lot of pieces around managing projects specifically, but just managing as a HMIS lead. So first we'll go through some presentations, I believe. And so my name is Eric Gammons, and I work for the Technical Assistance Collaborative, often known as TAC, up in Boston. I've been an HMIS lead before, I've been a COC manager before, and I've also been the director of operation at a couple big nonprofits, so kind of seen all sides of this world. And I find that this particular content is very helpful, especially if you're relatively new to the field.
Hello, my name is Samantha Kamiyama. People call me Sam. My pronouns are she, her. I'm from the western suburbs of Chicago. Most of my work is actually on products, data products. So I work on Eva, I work on Stella. You might have seen my face in the HMIS Lead webinar or telling a joke. I did once. And I used to be a system admin in a suburban COC, and then I've been a HUD TA now for almost 2 years. Thanks.
Green means go. Hi, my name is Max Burns. My pronouns are him, his. I work with the Cloudburst group. I'm also a kind of a TA provider, but my focus is kind of in data and data-related projects. I also work or live in Chicago, but actually in the city. Because if you're from Chicago, like the boundary of the border of the city, I learned is a big deal. So I need to make that distinction. My background, I'm not from there, from Oregon. My background's in kind of urban planning or public policy, and I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Ukraine. So glad to be here in the United States working on kind of similar stuff. So.
Thank you, too. So what are we going to be learning today? Mainly distinguishing project management from other kinds of management. There's executive management, there's corporate management. This is really focusing in on project management, having a project and figuring out how to complete it. Identifying HMIS lead responsibilities as an annual task list. So looking at all those things you're expected to do by your COC and designing a way to fulfill all those requirements or expectations. Prioritizing your responsibilities around the calendar, which like right now is a good example with the LSA looming. You don't want to plan a bunch of other activities at the same time. So you really do want to look at your HMIS lead responsibilities, expectations over a year long so that you're not piled up at the end of the year, which we already know is when everything happens as a HMIS lead. And then developing a more stable, predictable, and efficient HMIS administrative environment or administration environment. Just making it, I think we'll cover a little bit about different project tools you can use to make yourself more efficient, effective, and really providing the COC what it needs around HMIS and the data. So I have a poll question for you, and this is going to be a show of hands, real easy. But first, I need to do another quick poll. How many folks are HMIS leads? Awesome. How about COC folks? Got a few of those. Fantastic. Funders? No funders. Anybody else? Feel free to speak up. TA providers. I've heard there's a few of those around. How about HUD representatives? Hi, Fred. Glad to have you. So the poll question today, and I'm going to go through each. Raise your hand if it's applicable to you. Is your HMIS lead team able to plan for data reporting, monitoring, system administration, and other project management tasks? So number one is, yes, we plan proactively by topic. Got a couple, that's great. Number two, yes, we are able to, but we don't do it very well. That's kind of where I am. 3, sometimes we're usually reactive to the COC's needs, but we have moments where we stop and plan. I think that's the way I used to do it when I was a HMIS lead, if I remember correctly. 4 is no, we aren't able to because our team is pulled in too many directions to stop and plan. That's, yeah. I agree with that one also. And number 5, no, how could we when the COC doesn't communicate what our priorities are? Yeah. Some of y'all didn't raise your hands. Are there any I don't knows? No, I don't knows. Okay. So what is project management and how is it different than other management? Well, generally, regular management, you're concerned with a myriad of activities and things that you're in charge of or governing over or managing, including planning, executive actions, monitoring, controlling. But project management is more based on a thing that you have to get done, and you have to get it done by a certain time, or you have to complete it. It's an event or one thing. It has a finite time frame usually. Here's when we need to get this done. Let's use, I don't know, LSA as an example, right? So we all know it's probably going to be due, or maybe we already know when it's due, but sort of the end of January. And so the idea is that's a project, right? That's going to be one of our projects. If you're involved in the HIC and the PIT, another project. If you're helping with the system performance measures, another project, right? We have the change in data standards. That could potentially be a project. Any of the responsibilities or roles that have been identified by your COC for you as an HMIS lead to do can be divvied up as projects. So I found it easier if you hold it up because you have to point it. Yeah, it's in the back. Yeah. So project management for HMIS leads. We all know reporting deadlines become your projects. I kind of just went over that. The main system-wide reporting is in particular a project, but also your HMIS APR could be a project. Contracting and monitoring dates, hiring deadlines, training events can all be projects, especially if you're monitoring other projects using your system. By the way, cheap plug, tomorrow there's going to be a project monitoring, I think at 11, right around 11, that we'll be doing to sort of walk through you as an HMIS lead monitoring the projects using your system. That's certainly a project. Applying principles of project management to each deadline. You know, you want to be on time, typically. You want to be on budget, if there is a budget. And you want to be within the scope of whatever the project is. Try not to vary off into different areas, digress, or get caught up in politics or whatever else is going on in your COC. Treat each project with care, specificity, and oversight. Define, that's real key. It's like you have with each project roles, responsibilities, and things you have to get accomplished. Who's going to do them? When are they going to do them? Who's going to help? All that, that's part of project management. Who, what, when, where, how, why, all the things, all the W's and the H. So the HMIS leads rules of the road. Build trust, keep an open door, be active in COC meetings, schedule one-on-one time with agency staff. As HMIS leads, how many folks in here are in constant communication with your COCs? That's pretty good. So knowing your role and responsibilities is important as HMIS lead, but you know things change, right? So you may have in your agreement with the COC, these are the things I need to do, but as the COC moves on and tries to improve and tries to help those folks that are experiencing homelessness, you definitely need to adapt and adjust And when things happen that need to be done within a period of time, that's a project, right? You're going to kick in with project management. Hold focus groups with agency frontline staff and leadership when data quality standards are not being met to identify problems and develop solutions. One of the main roles as a HMIS lead is data quality. We all know that, right? That's the big struggle. It's getting folks to use the system that have beds for homeless folks and data quality. Data quality can become a project, especially when you're dealing with a particular agency or program. Like, that's a way to address data quality locally within maybe a set of users or a particular project is through project management. Incorporate diverse perspectives and community members. Stakeholder representation should include diversity across race, ethnicity, gender, abilities, sexual orientation, and other characteristics comparable to the community. Include people with lived experience. Include people with lived experience when you're designing whatever project you're attempting to accomplish. Stop it. Additional rules of the road. Attain commitment, consistency in HMIS committee meeting agendas. Emphasize partnerships, set clear goals and objectives. They're supported by realistic resources, tasks, and activities. So, how many folks have a data committee in here? HMIS committee? Do y'all run those? Yes? So that's great, right? You have a little bit of control over what's going on. The key is, though, is consistency and have the same folks in those meetings, right? Every time you have a meeting, every time you convene, having representation from an agency is great, or having representation from a COC is great, but try to set it where that it's the same folks every time you have a meeting. It makes it much more effective having a data committee or having any sort of HMIS committee. Maintain transparency. Actions taken by the HMIS committee should be public to COC members, including victim service providers. So things you're working on, projects you're working on, should be known by all, right? You're the HMIS lead. You basically work for the COC, right? The COC allocates a certain amount of money for HMIS services to keep the HMIS running. That money is taken away from its other projects just for that sole purpose. So in reality, it's the COC's HMIS, it's the COC's money, and you should be respectful of their needs, know what they want, and be able to show how that money is being used. And you can do that through projects. Like, you could say, these are all the projects we're working on, these are the things we're trying to accomplish, and this is the time we're trying to accomplish them in. And if you do have those committee meetings and you are responsible for them, make sure somebody's taking minutes. Not everybody can attend, right? So have minutes, make them public, let people know what's going on. So HMIS lead rules of the road number 5, be accountable, solicit feedback, hold internal team and external partners to clear standards, using meeting times to problem solve. Example is use performance review opportunities regularly and consistently for both internal HMIS lead members and external HMIS partner agencies. So reviewing your performance and reviewing their performance at the same time is a great way to show accountability. To be honest with you, when I was a COC manager, I did a lot of shaming, right, in PowerPoints. Like, this is the people that are not doing what they need to do. We're here to help. We can help you. I'm not saying that's the best way to do it, but find a way to get people involved and to let people know that they need to improve their performance. It doesn't always have to be public shaming. Just worked where I live, which is South Louisiana. Sometimes they're a little hard in the head down there. Focus on results. Use public scoreboards. Anybody use public scoreboards for data quality, for performance? A couple people. So public scoreboards are great with data quality. You don't necessarily have to name somebody. You can aggregate the data quality and just say, as a COC, this is where we stand, this is what we need to improve on, and this is how we're going to do it, and get feedback from your stakeholders on what they think would improve data quality. And I'm using data quality just as one example. Let's see, where am I? So partnerships and resources, HMIS leads must manage partnerships with COC partnering agencies and HMIS vendors, plus the HMIS lead team, right? So you have your own team, or you may be by yourself, depending on the size of your COC. You should absolutely be working, and many of you are, with your COC on a regular basis, but you also should be engaging with your partner agencies almost all the time. Like, find out how they're doing, what their issues are, where they're, what problems they're having with training, or how effective the training is. And then remember that you can always monitor them, and that monitoring is not necessarily a negative thing, it's a positive thing. You're going in there to help them build capacity, but you use monitoring to identify weaknesses. Oh, and this slide deck's going to be available. I see a few people taking pictures, but it should be available on the Whova app during or after the conference. Your HMIS team resources are crucial. Delegate entire tasks to one team member, both responsibility and authority. So when we talk a little bit more, and Max, I believe, and Sam's going to talk about like the process of project managing, but the real key is, if you're a boss, if you're in charge of the HMIS lead, delegate that authority, give somebody the responsibility for those projects. You're not having them be responsible for the HMIS lead and everything, but particular projects with deadlines, activities, budget, delegate that authority. And you might find you go be outside of the HMIS lead agency to get some things done. You may need your HMIS committee to do a few things, right? They may have some responsibilities to get projects done. You may reach out to other folks to get projects done. It doesn't have to be within the confines of just the HMIS lead staff, because y'all are way overworked all the time. So remember, COC has some other valuable resources you can take advantage of to get some of your projects finished. So I have another poll question. What would provide the most benefit to your HMIS lead team to help manage priorities and expectations? Number one, and show of hands, please, utilizing project management software. Well, I know what business I'm not getting into. Increasing task delegation. So again, that's like getting other folks to do some of the tons of work you're responsible for. What about more staff? More staff means what? More money, right? Yep. So if you're working hand in hand with your COC, then that's a constant discussion you should be having with your COC. How do we find more resources to support our HMIS activities? Be it COC money, be it ESG money, or some other source. But the COC can really support that effort of securing those additional funds so you can hire more staff and potentially pay them more, right? That's the other issue, is not being able to pay your HMIS staff enough where they're going to stay a while. Because every time somebody leaves, it leaves just a huge amount of intellectual knowledge goes out the window, right? And it's not an easy refit, right? It's really hard to find somebody that knows HMIS to come in and fill that position. That is difficult to fill. Well, what about clear expectations from the COC? Yeah, that one's kind of iffy, right? Sometimes you know what they want, sometimes you don't. Unless you're sitting at the table with them when they're planning, when they're discussing, you might not know what their expectations are of your HMIS lead staff or your HMIS lead services. What about dynamic staffing to respond to changes? Couple. Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to turn this over to Max. He'll take over from here with partnerships between COC and admin.
Hi, everyone. Oh, let me grab this. Oops. Whoa, that's a loud microphone. Hi, good afternoon. So to kind of like dovetail an important piece that kind of from Eric's portion that goes really into this is shared governance amongst your continuum. I saw a lot of people raise their hands and say that, you know, I'm an HMIS lead or I'm a sysadmin. Maybe you're not necessarily the collaborative applicant as well, or maybe you're kind of like working in a space where you have to work together. You can't both just go the same direction all the time. And this is, you know, one example in the continuum. You know, where I used to work, we would talk about there's two COCs. There's the big COC, which is the like planning network that we're all working together to end homelessness together and are a part of. And there's also the small COC, which is like the pot of money and the projects that are, and that's a simplification obviously, but in the, you know, bigger COC planning network, we have VSPs. You know, our plenary today was a big, you know, discussion about the importance of security, of privacy, of protecting survivors, of, you know, ensuring that comparable databases are, you know, maintained and used and are efficient. And so this section is intentionally put here to highlight the importance of that topic of collaboration with your VSP partners. So as COC admin or COC people or HMIS admins or leads, knowing FAWA is incredibly important. Again, Fran's comment earlier, you don't need to be a lawyer. There's great technical assistance providers out there where this is their expertise. They can, you know, if you need to go that route and dig deep into the regs, that's there for you. That support can be provided. But know that VSPs have different constraints than your normal projects that are going to be entering, entering data into HMIS in general, or just participating in the continuum, large and small, you know, as normal. You know, if we're going to talk about privacy and security, obviously, like confidentiality and like client data is incredibly important. Wow, did this get turned up a little bit? That's my bad. Okay, sorry, I shouldn't hold it. I should be steady. So, you know, from that perspective, for the issue, giving out services, only collect the data that's really necessary to facilitate those services. You know, making someone who just may have experienced, you know, a very traumatic event or one of the worst days of their life effectively, and then doing a long intake that's not, you know, productive for them, and like, is that data really going to help, all that data really going to help them get housed faster? You know, that's a local conversation you should have about, but, you know, we want to just make this statement known. You know, again, to reiterate, collaboration with those folks, you know, what works best for them. And we're going to talk about how VSPs interact or are kind of intertwined with, you know, the HMIS lead or admin role soon. And, you know, ask questions, offer support. Where I worked, VSPs kind of, you know, were kind of just coming into the larger continuum, it seemed, trying to coordinate, learn about their system, learn about the challenges and barriers their projects had. Was hard for me at my level, you know, really focusing in on the inventory and data and stuff like that. And so, you know, make a call, make a connection. I, you know, learned about their staff from administering the HIC in the pit for a couple of years, and that really helped our data quality actually improve for those particular processes from my experience. So, Sam, if you can go to the next slide, please. So we have kind of, you know, the next couple slides are going to really highlight these big like signposts that we as leads, as HMIS folks, have to pay attention to. And, you know, for the most part, VSPs, these providers, their projects follow a very similar cadence. Obviously, they need to participate in the PIC and the HIC. They are going to have end-of-year reporting requirements. They're going to have, obviously, hopefully, are going to participate in the COC competition. Your response, you know, the last couple of years, their participation in that process has been critical. Any kind of updates to their vendors, their systems, you know, we as admins might want to pay attention to or should pay attention to, right? You know, we can't necessarily get into the nitty-gritty of it like we do with our HMIS vendors, but, you know, having it in our minds that they're going through, you know, change, and we should keep that in mind. And then obviously end-of-year reporting, SAGE, all kinds of APR stuff. So like there's points, right, over the year where we interconnect, we work together, or we have to work together. And so those could align oftentimes, and sometimes those could be, they don't necessarily work in with the larger of what's going on in the continuum, which if you could go to the next slide. Oh, it's the next one, my bad. So just if this is kind of like your first experience, really, talking about VSPs, learning about comparable databases, this, again, we said these slides would be made available later on, but we get questions to the AAQ desk all the time of like what's considered a comparable database, and there are products available on the HUD Exchange for you as HMIS admin who should be familiar with to provide assistance or support to maybe any of your VSPs who are looking to maybe put out an RFP or find a new vendor if that's what they want. Obviously, there's lots of products around the schema, the reporting requirements, the manual. Obviously, like dig around in Sage. If you're very new to the fields, you're going to spend a lot of time in Sage in the long run. So save yourself the hassle now and kind of dig in. And then any of the kind of reporting stuff that is related to HMIS. Obviously, right now, because the data change, some stuff is in flux. All those kinds of things are coming. We get questions about it all the time on the AQ or in passing. So, vendors will change or stuff will come out. So now to the next slide. So in every community that receives COC funding, ESG funding, participates in a lot of the federal partner programs, you're going to have this kind of like these signposts, these big parts of like the roadmap of the annual cycle. So you're going to have your PIT and your HIC and your system performance measures early on in January, March kind of territory. Obviously the LSA falls in that period, and then you're kind of also like wrapping up your end of year reporting in some programs, and then you kind of like hit the ground running even though you're not done and you're going straight into the prep for the competition. Local data quality processes are picking up. Maybe other federal partner agencies are furnishing their competitions as well for their programs. And then every couple of years we have the data standard changes. So HUD, asks for feedback about what's going on to engage the community. You kind of move into the summer. Everyone is wondering when the COC NOFO is going to happen. And then maybe there's more data standards related stuff going on. And then it's the end of the year, and you're like, I just did the HIC and the PIT like 2 weeks ago, but really that was like 6 months ago. And so you're just kind of on the treadmill in some regards, right? Every community can, as long as you hit the signposts, how you get to the signposts is a local decision, like whatever works for you all. You just got to make sure that you fit within the requirements in a sense. Sam, if you could go on to the next slide. So that was kind of the at a glance high level and reporting kind of signposts. But then, Eric's points about, and what I said, shared governance. How do we work within the larger continuum to work with our community? So that could be, attending or participating, not attending, or listening in the system admin calls every month. Obviously, you can have, identity or affinity-based, components of your continuum of care who, have input or ideas about how data is collected or data is used, and you have frequent, or maybe it's infrequent depending on your capacity or their capacity, touch points. Obviously, you have large-scale events like NEH, obviously NHSDC, and then you kind of have, the stuff that you have to fit in with the signposts about the reporting. I know that it kind of drives our world, but that's kind of just, it's a part of it, but it also is intended to make sure that we're looking forward, right? That we're staying on track as communities and that we're ensuring transparency and accountability. I'm going to turn over to Sam now because she's going to, finish out this section around kind of the signposts and then going to go into some of the, question.
Well, you had on the other slide, VST, what was that?
Data standards.
Okay.
No, that's a great question. So the question for the folks at home, can you go back one slide? Hey, Eric, can you hit the clicker? So there's an acronym up here, DST, Data Standards. That's what that means. Sorry for the confusion. Are there any other questions? I guess we should pause maybe and see if there are any about what I've said or maybe what Eric has said. Go ahead. Wait, hold on. Can we get the mic to you really quick so we can make sure our friends at home can hear?
I have a question about the pig count.
Yeah.
Is it required to be done every year? Because my understanding of it is that the unsheltered count is only required every other year.
The requirement is that the unsheltered count is conducted every other year. Now, it might be a local decision to do the unsheltered count on an annual basis for local planning purposes and to inform like what's going on.
Does anyone here do a summer and a winter pig count?
There's a hand to your left and a hand behind you to your right. As a tentative hand, that might be a maybe.
Okay.
So we have another example of a community that does a youth count in the summer as like a supplemental kind of approach. Great question. Any other kind of questions? Oh, right here in the mid aisle.
This is actually for you. You had the project management tools as one of the, what are the tools that you recommend or you've seen other COCs use that have been effective?
Sam,
Yeah.
Sam?
Yeah,
I'm actually
sorry.
going to go over that later in the presentation. So if you
Good question, though. Yes.
Yeah. Anything else before I turn it over to Sam? Cool. All right. Thanks, everyone.
No, I wasn't gonna. Can y'all hear me? Oh, yes, you can. So I'm just going to be talking about some more signposts or just some more things that you can think about while you're planning out your year. So here we have a year in the life trainings, and I know that these are set up quarterly, but definitely you don't have to do it quarterly. For example, you have to think about your new user trainings. New user trainings can be monthly. They can be, if you have a learning management system in your COC, they can be self-paced. So whenever someone needs to have that training to get access to HMIS, you can have those. We also have some refresher trainings that you can think about, like maybe as you're going throughout the year, you're noticing some kind of like data quality issues, workflow issues, and you're realizing that maybe you're gonna have to either do an ad hoc training on something specific, like housing move-in date. I know that can be confusing to a lot of end users. Or even just like a refresher, like if you just wanna talk about like how emergency shelter nights, bed nights are recorded in your specific HMIS. And then we have, so we have the security, privacy, and data quality in here. And those are really connected to things like policies and procedures. And policies and procedures are supposed to be reviewed and updated annually. And it is the HMIS lead's responsibility where if it is updated to let your end users know that, because we all know that your end users are, you're executing an agreement with your end users and they're agreeing that they will abide by the policies and procedures. And we should really make sure that our end users know what policies and procedures they actually have to abide by. You may even have to do a yearly training. I'm sure that a lot of you did a training for the data standards updates because of the changes in the way that end users would have to collect information, like for example, race and ethnicity. That's a pretty big change about how they're gonna enter that into HMIS. So there's a whole lot of things that go in here. If you can go to the next slide. So a really great thing is if you make those investments in your training plan early. So a great thing to do would be maybe you just develop and regularly update a training plan, especially for your new end user trainings, since those are going to be your most common, but they don't change as much. So the only thing you have to worry about is training at the time instead of having to create your training plan as you go. The things that you can develop for those are like curriculum content, like perhaps you want to do like the first half be about your policies and procedures. That would be like your security, your privacy, your data quality expectations. And then you can do audience size. When I was an HMIS admin, I could not do any trainings past the size of 6 people because you could have 6 people that are really struggling with working with HMIS for the first time, and it does those end users a disservice if you're just like walking around and trying to fix 6 people's computers at the same time. The length of the training, this is also something important to plan because you might have to dedicate an entire day to an end user training if you're not doing like self-paced videos, if you're doing them all in person. And then planning hands-on activities, because we know that HMIS trainings, I've had a few people fall asleep, but that's fine. It's okay, I understand. And then it's also important to do feedback loops, reports, surveys, scorecards, dashboards to identify training needs and target high-value areas. You kind of want to get that in the beginning because then you're going to start seeing data quality issues later down the line, and you're going to have to start fixing them all at once later down the line when we kind of want to know what are the things that we actually need to train more on. For example, when I was in HMIS admin, one of the things that people struggled with were tracking income, and it was really confusing for a lot of people. And I realized after a few cycles of our monthly HMIS user trainings that it was the way I think that I was training, or at least there was something that I could do to help them understand that. But yes, and then you would help put out fires, freeing up your time for strategic work. Okay, next slide. Next, we put in here just some coordinated entry data management, just like some general things to think about. So we have here BNL stands for by name list, your prioritization list. Here it's like quarterly, but for some people it might be monthly, or it could even be more often, depending on if you have a by name list that's specific to populations, like maybe you have a veteran list, a youth list, a family list, and then an overall list. And then we have just some more policies and procedures, but more related to coordinated entry. So we have like privacy and visibility, CE performance, workflow updates, provider onboarding. Provider onboarding could be an entire project in itself. If you're onboarding a whole provider, you might need to do an ad hoc training, you might need to do workflow setups, et cetera, et cetera. And then referral and matching, if you're doing referrals and matching outside of your case conferencing meetings, that would be a project that you'd have to keep track of. Like maybe you dedicate a specific amount of time in your week to do that referral and matching process. And then contracts and monitoring. So I think something that HMIS leads, especially new HMIS leads, aren't aware of is that you have a say in your vendor contract. I feel like a lot of people kind of just accept that the vendor contract is what it is, but you as the HMIS lead or the HMIS admin, you are considered the subject matter expert on HMIS data standards and what the vendors are supposed to actually provide you, like what reports they're required to provide to you, et cetera, et cetera. And so that is something that you should be reviewing and maybe updating annually, and I just wanted to point that out as well. And the rest, yeah, they're more policies and procedures things, so again, those should be reviewed and updated annually, and just keep that in mind when you're planning out your year. Okay, so the project management tools, which I heard someone asked about. So I know that not a lot of people raise their hand for a project management tool would help them, but I am a very strong proponent of project management tools, especially because, as Eric was talking about, a lot of the things that happen in HMIS are very project and deadline based, and if you don't see them all together, they just start piling up, and then you just get overwhelmed. For example, the LSA, the PIT, the system performance measures all add up, and you may not know exactly, like maybe your system performance measures are like 20% done, and your LSA is like 10% done, but you don't really have an awareness of where it is, and then suddenly it's all of those deadlines all at once. So I'm just gonna go through some project management tools. The first one is a calendar. That's a very simple one. So the calendar is a really great way to look at how busy you are, how many things you're working on at a specific amount of time. So for example, in February, you have the SPM submission is due, you're probably working on the HIC PIT,
You're probably also maybe working on your ESG/CV quarterly report. This can be filled in with all of the things that are within your community as well. You can start adding in your monthly end user trainings. You can add in your by name list reports, all of those things. It is also, actually, the calendar is also a good way to help you prioritize. So if you see that a deadline is really coming up, but you have another thing that you're working on, you can kind of tell yourself, wait, I should probably put that down and work on my the deadline that's coming up real quick. And it's also a good way to say no to people, because then you can show them your calendar and you say, look how busy I am. I don't have time for your report that's due in 2 days when you should have asked me a month ago. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is very small, I'm sorry. This is what is called a Gantt chart. So a Gantt chart kind of helps you work on, it helps you see your progress by task. So I don't know, can I move and point? I'm gonna, okay. So this is very small, I understand. But here we have your task category. So that can be like your LSA. And then you kind of have to start thinking about like, what are the different tasks that I need to do in the LSA? The first one, check if you can submit an LSA. So that would be the first task. Maybe the second task would be check on data quality based on the results that you got from the LSA. A third task would be I need to contact all of the agencies about all of these data quality issues that I'm seeing. And then I think they also did, for people that attended the HMIS admin webinar, they also talked about like different benchmarks that we have. So you can see here on this side, sorry, I'm excited about this tool. These are by weeks. And I think what the HMIS, in the HMIS admin webinar, they said you had 7.5 weeks for the LSA from the beginning to the end. And you can really see that, like, I think they had an interim benchmark of, I can't remember the exact date, but they're like, by this date, you should be sure that you are able to upload your LSA export. And so you can put that there, and then you have like, by this date, maybe you set a deadline for yourself saying, by this date, I want to have all of the notes that I need from the providers. Like maybe their utilization is a little low or they're overutilized and you need to ask them why, and you want to give yourself a few days to review the notes that they provide to you, so you give yourself a deadline. So what's nice about this as well is that there are percentages here, and here is like the number of days that you expect a task to take, and there are percentages here, so you can see like, okay, I've only received notes from like 2 of my agencies, so that's only 20% done. And then that can really help you prioritize on what you have to do next. Okay, next slide. This is a work breakdown structure. So this is actually probably the most useful in the planning phase of a project. For example, like we were talking about the data standards update. So like, what are the different phases of a data standard update? You would review the data standards and kind of determine how it would actually be implemented in your community. That might have to be, that should be reading the data standards and also talking to your vendor. HMIS implementations are different everywhere. There's no HMIS implementation that is the same as the other. So you should really talk about, you should have talked to your vendor about how it would affect your implementation specifically. And then your next phase would be updating HMIS. That could be all of the PDDE things that you had to do for the data standards. I don't know if you all know about 2.09, coordinated entry participation, that data element, I'm sure you do. And that would be like a task you would have under that. It would be talking to your projects, your rapid rehousing projects, about what subtype they actually are. I'm sure you also know about that data element. And then another task would be training end users. What does that entail for you? Hopefully that means like creating a training plan so you know what you're talking about, scheduling those, making it available to those that aren't able to attend. Maybe you record those, things like that. And then monitoring and continuous improvement, which I'm sure you're all doing now. How did that data standards update go? Were there any changes that we need to do? Things like that. Okay, And then we have a Kanban board. I don't know if y'all have heard about this, but this is mostly about just like kind of putting all your tasks all at once. So like, for example, if you have the HIC, I find Kanban boards to be more useful by project. So let's say you have the HIC, and in your backlog or your the tasks that you want to do, you want to review the HIC guidance once it comes out. You want to email out requests for PDDE info. You want to run through what you already have in HMIS regarding a project's PDDEs. You want to confirm the updates to bed and unit inventory. You want to confirm your submission process, like who actually presses submit on the HIC. And you want to update your bed and unit inventory with any information. And the reason I think that I'm so excited about project management boards is that we understand that HMIS admins can be really busy, and they're juggling a lot of different types of tasks at the same time. And you may be a team of one. You're not leading an entire HMIS team, so you need to prioritize. Like, do you prioritize the training that's coming up tomorrow, or do you prioritize the report that's due next week? And having different project management tools can really assist in making sure that you stay sane and that you're able to give the best that you're able to, if needed. Next slide. Oh, I did my project management tool spiel too early. I forgot I had 2 more to share. I'm sorry. So the next thing is a learning management system. So a learning management system, I'm sure some of you have done it, where it's like more of a self-paced training where you can go online. There's a course set out for you, like if you are learning about end user, like if you're a new end user, you would just go through these specific courses. This is really helpful to free up your time if a lot of your time is involved in training, especially if you have a lot of turnover, which we understand in this field that can be possible. But we know that like learning management systems can be prohibitively costly. What I've heard in some communities is some COCs have partnered with each other and to take on the cost of a learning management system, their courses and their COC like materials stay completely separate, but they just have the same management system. So that's something that could be useful to you too. It could even be like if you're doing an end user training and you're doing all of your training in person, you could have maybe just the privacy plan and the security plan and the data quality plan that's recorded, because that's usually won't change and won't need as much of your like in-person assistance. You can have that recorded, and then you can just have the actual hands-on HMIS training in person. So that's an idea. Okay, next slide. And then a ticketing system. I have to ask a question on here, because it's kind of like a ticketing system. It helps you prioritize the tickets that come in. You know, probably the ones that are like, please reset my password, I have a report due in an hour. Those are probably like really important. And then you have the ones that are like, I'm curious about how many people went into my shelter, just a random curious person. That might be not as important. But a ticketing system would be great. You can even do it through email. I know like a lot of people that do, they just categorize their emails like, this question is about a password reset, this question is about a report that they want to know, things like that. But yeah, another plug for the AAQ desk. And the last thing I just want to talk about is a reminder about reporting deadlines now that we're talking about it. We just want to say that like a lot of the things that like the goalposts that Max was talking about, these are always subject to change. It could be changed because of just what's happening, changing priorities, report implementation, data cleaning processes, et cetera, et cetera. And another reason why planning out your year is so useful is because when things do change, it is much easier for you to adapt. So like perhaps you have a report that you expected was going to be due at this time, but it's actually going to be due a month later. But you already know, because you kind of tasked out your year, that you have a very large training planned for a provider at that time. And then what you can do is that you can kind of shift your own priorities, and you can say, okay, well, maybe I need to reschedule this training because I really need to focus on this report that was that is now moved deadlines. So make sure that when you plan out your year, to be flexible and to understand that this is just what you expect your year to be, and you can reprioritize using all of the different information that you have already planned out. Okay, that was actually my last slide. Does anybody have any questions? Or would like to share a way that they manage how all their tasks in HMIS?
Hey, I'd like to see who has a ticketing system. Does anybody operate a ticketing system? Is that a pretty effective way to address the needs of your users? Oh.
Yeah, I'm in Fresno, California. We use Zendesk, and it's very user-friendly. I love it. We just have to commonly redirect people back to it. And I remind people, if you want your requests to be at the bottom of my email, please send them directly to me instead of using the Zendesk. So yeah, you just have to keep reminding people until they learn that that's how we will respond to them.
Nice, thank you.
We actually have two ticketing systems. One is, we used to use Zendesk. We replaced that with Help Scout, but kind of the same process. We also have, our vendor has a ticketing system integrated into the software. So if someone is operating in the software and runs into some sort of an issue, they can submit a ticket right at that point. It'll take a snapshot of where they are, the client details, and then we will get that through our kind of supportive end through the solution. So, but having a ticketing system and a help desk has worked really well for us. We're able to track the number of tickets. We're able to see patterns and trends. If there are things we need to create either another standardized report or IHOP report, or maybe even develop trainings on. So it helped us to really gauge a lot of those processes to see where we can do some system improvement on our end.
Nice, thank you for sharing. How about LMS? Anybody use that's weird. Anybody use a LMS? Care to share how it works? Does it work for you?
Yeah, we have been using an LMS, Talent LMS, if folks know it, for about a year now, and it really has saved so much time. We set it up for both new end user trainings and then also refresher trainings, and we put like quizzes and tests there. It scores it, and then it just lets them know, you need these documentation. Please make sure you send that. So it's a big life changer for us.
Anybody else? Oh. Well, you just have all of these.
Yes, we use LMS as well. We started using it about 2017, actually, but with very limited capacity. We kind of piloted beginning to use it with our new user program, and then COVID-19 hit. And so we decided this was a great opportunity to expand its capacity and its use. So we moved all of our trainings to the virtual platform. So our new user, our program specific trainings, our refresher training are all held there. And we oftentimes have some for just like our HMIS reps, so power users, that we also have in that solutions. So things like how to find a duplicate, how to avoid creating a duplicate. We found that through the help desk and issues that we see, we were able to develop some trainings that could help take the load off the team of having to keep repeating those data quality issues. We could use the LMS system to do some of that work for us.
I absolutely love that. So you're using a ticketing system to get feedback from your from your users, from your partner agencies, and then when you see something trending, address it with the LMS. Oh, thanks for sharing. That's beautiful. Anybody else care to share?
The ticketing system that we have actually is for our reporting. So we have our data quality framework, we have our enrollment report, our ROI audit, and others actually set up so that when they receive those, they get a ticket. And when they have done their review and they've completed all their error reviews, they click complete. So then that is actually documented. So when I send them the APR, I send them also an error ticket, which pinpoints each and every error so they know where to look and where to fix it. Once they're done with that, then they also click complete on that error ticket. So then that's also documented.
Yeah, I like it. So the output, like you're letting them know what they need to do, and then they're letting you know when the outcome is done, when they've repaired everything. Is that what I'm hearing? And so you don't have to keep checking, spending your time saying, hey, did you get this done yet? Did you get this done yet? You get automatic feedback. That's beautiful.
I think that's
Thank you.
interesting too, because when you're working on your reporting, it's not just like buried in your emails, but what their actual like steps were, but instead it's in a ticket, something that you can, I assume, report on later and analyze how long it took them to get done, things like that. That's really interesting.
There was a question to ask what product of a ticketing system that you're using to do that. And internally, that's your own like product or system that you're using to do that? Okay. Thank you. And there was another hand in the middle here, right? Oh, right. I think we got time for like one more, maybe more, maybe less.
We also transitioned to LMS, when COVID hit, and we're expanding it. I think which is great. I think the challenge that we are now starting to see is that our providers have expected like on-demand training, which is great, and we want to make sure that we're providing on-demand training. But the truth of the matter is, not everyone should be doing a LMS training, right? A training in the LMS. So we're really trying to find that balance of like in-person training versus a virtual training, especially for new users. I don't know if anyone else has had that issue.
Well, and considering the investment in an LMS, right? So not only financially, but just the time it takes to set up those trainings, and you're going to have to update them every time something changes, right? So there's a considerable investment in LMS, but it can, especially if you're a larger COC geographically, it can really help with some of those basic trainings. I just recommend segmenting it off. Don't put the whole training in one LMS, like segment it. That way, when you do need to go in and revise, you're only revising a small piece of that LMS. Anybody else? We got like 1 minute left. Well, thanks for coming, folks. We're glad to have you, especially after lunch. We know it's not easy. Everybody stayed awake. So thank y'all, and we'll see you around the conference.
Thanks, everybody.